In this video, I'm going to show you how to install stone veneer on an outdoor kitchen, and in this case, it's CertainTeed stone facade, which does not require mortar, which makes it an excellent DIY friendly product. And if you're new to this channel, my name's Josh. This channel is all about DIY, save a ton of money, so be sure to subscribe, ring that bell so you get notification every time I release a new video, and hammer that like button for me. That's all I ask in return for making this video. So we got a lot to go over today, so let's get started. In the previous videos, I showed you step by step how I framed, built the concrete countertops, and installed the doors, drawers, and grills. And this is part 4 of a 4-part series on how to build an outdoor kitchen. If you want to check out that playlist, I'll put a link in the description below. This video was sponsored by CertainTeed. CertainTeed is a manufacturer of the stone facade veneer that we will be installing in this video. The great thing about the stone facade is it looks just like real stone without all the complications that real stone has to offer. So with stone veneer, it's important that you have a really good high quality rain screen behind the stone veneer. So what CertainTeed did, which is awesome, is they included a built-in rain screen, so it's a foolproof way to install the stone veneer properly. Also, the stone facade has these integrated interlocking panels that this top will be the bottom of the next panel, and it will have this design that will interlock into the top of the panel, which is going to make it such a secure install. Some great features to the CertainTeed stone facade is that it's going to be very easy to install if you do not have any masonry skills or special tools. It's going to be less time, less prep, and less cost to install the CertainTeed stone facade. It's going to have the built-in rain screen that I showed you, so you don't have to worry about any rot or mold issues. CertainTeed stone facade is leading the industry when it comes to having the least amount of repeat panels. It has 110 square feet of unique panel designs, and also every panel is hand painted. So you will not have a repeat in color pattern, which is a huge benefit because a lot of manufactured stones have that issue. And another thing about all these is that it's safer to install compared to comparable products. When this CertainTeed stone facade was being delivered, I was very impressed on how just neatly packaged the stone facade was and just how tight and nested everything was placed, which made me feel really good about the product, knowing that there was care taken and that there's probably minimal breakage within the cartons of the stone veneer. So that's very important to note. If you're interested in CertainTeed stone facade or any other CertainTeed products, be sure to check out their website. I'll put a link in the description below. This is a covered outdoor kitchen, and even though it's covered, it is important to flash around access doors and drawers before installing the stone facade. I'm using a product called flashing tape, and the flashing tape is what it sounds like it is. It's just tape that flashes around items on a building. Before installing the CertainTeed stone facade, be sure that you have the correct substrate. The substrate here is 1/2-inch plywood. You could also have 7/16 sheathing. Either one of those are fine. And if you remember from my framing video of this outdoor kitchen, this is actually pressure treated 1/2-inch plywood. So with that being said, it's important to have the correct substrate. And along with the correct substrate, it's important to have the correct barrier between the substrate and the rain screen. And this is a weather resistant barrier, and it's self-adhering. And this is going to be stuck onto the structure first before installing the stone veneer panels. In order to install the barrier, it's very self-explanatory. I'm simply going to peel off the back and get it started, then roll it out and then trim off the top in order to have it cut the length and have it tight on the bottom. And also, if you're doing this on a house, you can run this vertically on the walls, which that's what I would recommend, and just overlap what it's recommended onto this blue line. So, but because this outdoor kitchen, it's smarter to run it around like so, that's what I'm going to be doing. If you do decide to install this on a large wall horizontally, be sure to start at the bottom and work up, so that way the overlaps are proper in which water would drain over the wall correctly. For the barrier installation, I got 2 tools that I'm using for placing it onto the structure. I got a hand roller here, and this is just to help tack it on and get it started as I roll it out. And then for the large fields, I got a bigger roller here, and this I'm going to go through and make sure we put some pressure and seal it tight to the structure. So you definitely want to make sure you use a roller of some kind to do so. And also, I'm going to take my utility knife and cut off this excess barrier and then take it off as I go. So as you can see, the installation of the barrier is very straightforward. Because there were so many obstacles in the way, such as these access doors and drawers and grill, it was much easier to cut strips of the barrier to place around the items instead of trying to keep it in one big piece. Before installing the starter strip, I'm going to be installing this aluminum flashing, and you could also use brown trim coil or black trim coil as flashing. So we're going to just run this right along the bottom, pretty much flush with the bottom of our wood. You can hang down just a little bit if you want to, but you can just run it flush as well, whatever you want to do there. And then we got to use aluminum nails in order to secure this, or you could also use galvanized nails. So either or is fine, and we're just going to nail it every so often across this bottom and then just cut around our outdoor kitchen appliances, doors and drawers, and vents. For the inside corners, it is recommended that you flash those as well. I took a piece of this aluminum flashing and bent it to fit into this corner. I'm going to nail this into place on each inside corner. When installing the starter strip for the stone facade, we want 2 inches of clearance from a paved surface or 4 inches of clearance from a soiled surface. So with that being said, this outdoor kitchen is actually on a paved surface, but there's a slope from the front where the garage is clear down to the back to where the outdoor kitchen is. So I don't want a huge gap on the bottom of my outdoor kitchen. So what I'm going to do, because I know there's about 1.5 inch difference of fall whenever I start installing this stone, so I'm going to start up at this side of the outdoor kitchen relatively tight to the stamped concrete. And then once I get to this side of the outdoor kitchen, we're going to have more of a gap on the bottom, because I want my rows of stone to look nice and level, because the countertop is setting perfectly level more or less. So I'm actually going to use the bottom of the countertop as a gauge to measure down from to install my starter strip. This is the highest point of the outdoor kitchen, so I'm going to use this point to get my measurement that's going to be the same measurement for the level starter strip. So I'm going to measure down to the concrete, and I got 35 3/4. So I'm just going to come down 35 3/8 to the bottom of my starter strip. So the starter strip's 4 inches wide, so I'm going to subtract 4 inches from that. So we're actually going to come down 31 3/8. And then we're going to mark here and make a level line to line the top of our starter strip up with. Now on this little run, I'm just going to use a 4-foot level to make my level line, but whenever we get to the longer sections, we'll chalk a line. The black marker line is going to be the top of our starter strip. I'm now going to get a measurement to my corner, and I want to subtract 1/2 inch off that length in order for our corners for the stone facade to work out correctly. And then I'm going to leave a 1/2 inch gap from the structure as well. 25 inches, so we're going to cut it 24 inches. In order to cut the starter strip, I'm first going to place my measurement onto the starter strip, and if you remember, it is 24 inches, so we're going to mark our measurement right here. And then we're going to use a speed square in order to get a square line. And the back end of this, as long as we're not too long, it doesn't really have to be a perfectly straight line, but since I have my speed square here, that's what we're going to do. And we're going to take our 10 snips and just cut this just like we did the flashing. It cuts really easy. Now we're going to install this onto the wall. The screws that I'll be using for this installation are number 8 1/2" stainless steel zinc plated screws that are exterior grade. I'm now simply just going to take the starter strip, line the top of the starter strip up with the line we made, and just screw it every 8 to 10 inches to the structure. I'm now just going to follow those same principles and install this starter strip around the whole outdoor kitchen. Before installing any siding, I do like to locate the studs and try to hit the studs whenever I'm installing the siding. So for the stone facade, I'm going to do the same. I'm just going to take my stud finder here and then locate each stud, and then I'm going to take my level and just level a line right between those marks, and that's going to be the center of the stud. So it gives me a good reference to go off of to try to hit the stud as I'm installing the stone facade. And just to verify, I like to do the tap test to make sure that's it. And I can hear it solid there, so I know there's a stud behind that part of the wall. So I'm going to do that around the whole outdoor kitchen. When starting the stone facade onto the starter strip, we must note that we have tabs here at the bottom of each first piece of stone. So we got to remove those using tin snips. So the tin snips that I have here are just your standard tin snips. You can even use aviation snips or whatever you have on hand in order to remove this tab. So to remove this tab, all we have to do is snip this part of the tab off. And it cuts relatively easy with the correct tool. And whenever we remove these tabs, that's going to allow us to sit down on the starter strip nice and straight like we need it to do. And we have to remove this not only on the corners, but also on the flats. And they only need removed on the first row. In order to give the stone cladding system a very architectural look, CertainTeed offers left and right corners that's going to go up each corner staggered, so that way we have a very detailed look up each corner. It's going to look really natural and clean. So we're going to install the corners first. In order to start the corner, this is the piece that I removed the bottom tabs off of. We're going to place it tight right up to the corner, and it's going to sit directly onto that starter strip. So now that we're tight onto the corner, I'm going to take a rubber mallet, just give it a little tap, not real hard, just a little tap, just to make sure it's up tight against it. And then I'm going to use a torpedo level and place right on top of the stone veneer. And we're going to try to level the stone veneer as best as we can with this torpedo level. So right here, and I always like to level off the long piece of the corner, just because the short piece of the corner here is almost irrelevant compared to this section of the corner. So now that we got it nice and level, we're just going to place a screw here to hold it. And I'm just going to mark it here so I know where to place it level again. So now that we have that marked, I'm going to take one of my stainless steel screws and we're going to install it right to that mark. And now I'm going to double check it here. And as you can see, we're sitting perfectly level there. That's what we want. Now I'm going to install another screw here on this side of the metal flange. That corner is installed. As you just seen, this is way quicker than installing the stone veneer that requires mortar. That went on in no time. And we didn't have the aggravation of messing with mortar, which is a huge plus coming from somebody who has installed a lot of stone veneer using mortar. So this is definitely a lot quicker system. And now for our next corner, it's going to be installed on the opposing side. And now we want to have our flanges onto all the other rows. Now that we got a corner started, I'm going to install a flat that have the tabs removed off the bottom in order to extend this part. And we're going to lay this right in onto the starter strip. Then we're going to butt it right to that corner piece like so. And I'm just going to give it a little tap here. Just to make sure we're butt tight. And that looks good. Now what we're going to do, similar to that corner, we're going to use our torpedo level and just make sure that we're sitting nice and level. So this looks really good. If anything, I need to come up on my side just a tad, right there, and I'm going to mark where it needs to sit. I'm now going to install a screw into this first piece on the very end to hold it into place. And as you can see, we're sitting nice and level. Now I'm going to put a screw here on each end of the flanges. Now I am going to place a screw here on my stud to make sure I hit into a stud when I can. I'm now going to install the second corner, and as you can see, we have a corner that is facing in the other direction. So instead of having a left or right corner, whichever one you start out with, we want the opposite. So now as you can see, the long piece of the corner is now on this side of the wall. Just going to give a little tap, make sure we're tight against that corner. And then I'm going to check it with my level. And that looks good right there. And I'm going to place a screw here to hold it into place just like we did our first corner. And we simply rinse and repeat that process. Now I will say I am going to check it with a 4-foot level as I go too, just to make sure we stay consistently level. I'm now at a place where I must make a cut in order to install this next piece. And something to keep in mind, whenever you're making a cut, be sure you cut it on the opposing side of the high traffic visibility entry or exit from a structure. So for instance, where the camera is sitting right now, there's going to be more traffic coming in this way and looking this direction. So we want to make sure that we put our cut on this side so that way you can't see it as much when you're looking this way, because if you put your cut on this side, you're going to see into the cut the most because that's where most of the traffic's coming in at. So just keep that in mind. Now, in order to get your measurement, it's very easy. We simply just got to measure from stone to stone in this case, and we got 13.5 inches. And also, if you're cutting up against a structure, leave an 1/8 inch gap in order to allow for some movement and expansion, just so you know. In order to cut the stone facade, you can use a couple different tools. The first tool that I'd recommend is a wet saw. A wet saw is going to give you a much easier way of cutting because it has water that circulates over the blade as you cut, so it does not throw dust up in the atmosphere like a masonry blade on a circular saw or miter saw. Those options using the masonry blade or diamond blade on those tools are okay, but they throw up a lot of dust. So whenever you throw up that much dust, there's more of a health risk involved, and it's also more dirty to work with. So I highly recommend you renting or purchasing a wet saw for the installation of the stone facade. So in order to do this, I have my tabs cut off the bottom here. That's going to be for our starter. And now because of that, I'm going to butt that in tight up to this side of the wet saw, and this table will slide like so. So wherever you place this stone facade is where it's going to stay while you're cutting. And something to keep in mind is you want it set nice and square. So I'm going to measure off this end because that's the side that we don't want our cut on. We want it on the left side of the stone facade. So I'm going to pull over to 13.5 inches off the edge and make my mark. I'm simply going to line that up with my wet saw blade, and let me go ahead and slide it up to it. All right, and as you can see, it's up against the wet saw blade where we want it to cut, right there. I'm now going to wear the proper PPE when using any power tools, and in this case we're going to be using ear protection and eye protection. And if you're using a masonry blade or diamond blade without a wet saw, be sure to wear a respirator. Now I'm going to make this cut nice and slow. I wanted to keep this clip in real time just so you can observe just how slow you should cut through the stone facade. You don't want to rush it because it's hard on your wet saw, and also if you want a clean cut, it's important to take your time with it. Again, this is a wet saw, so if you don't have experience with one, There's something that it takes a little bit of getting used to, but it's definitely the way to go when it comes to cutting the stone facade. As you just seen, the wet saw makes a fantastic cut. And now in order to clean off this edge, if you'd like, go ahead and just dump that into a bucket of water, clean water, so that way it gets off any of the dirty water from the stone facade. Now that I have the stone cut the length, I'm going to install it right into that starter strip, just like the corners and the flats. And that's going to finish up this first row. And as you can see, these cuts look great, even if they're straight, because of the design on the stone cladding. That is a fantastic look for our first row. So now that we have it where we want it, we can either just line up the end-to-end panel to where they join the first two corners, or I could put my level on it if I wanted and go ahead and just level it up. But it's more important in this case just to have the ends of the stone panels to line up with each other. And just like the other pieces of the stone facade, we're going to install the screws into the metal flange to hold it into place. Whenever you meet the bottom of a window, or if you meet, in this case, it's going to be these access doors for the outdoor kitchen, we're going to have to rip around the bottom of this item. And with that being said, you may want to install some kind of window sill here if you have a window. Just so you know, they do offer those as accessories for the stone facade. So in order to cut around this, I just want to leave a small gap underneath this, not very much, about 1/8. I'm just going to measure right up to the bottom of this. And it looks like if I cut this 5 3/4, it'll work out just fine. And then on this side, we need to come up to what it should be, and we're going to go 2 1/2. So I'm just going to cut right around the bottom of this access door. Now that we have the stone ripped down to fit underneath that access door, as you can see, we had to remove the screw flange in order to do so. And because of that, we now need to drill holes in the face of this stone facade in order to anchor it to the outdoor kitchen. Now, you will need 2 different type of masonry drill bits. The 2 that you'll need, or actually different sizes, not necessarily types, is a 7/32 and a 3/8 inch masonry bit. So we're going to drill a hole right into the face of this, towards the upper end of it in this case, so I can try to hide the screw hole best I can. And we will be using color matching caulk after we're done all of the installation, and I'll show you that towards the end of the video to seal those holes. So I'm first going to drill the 7/32 hole and then follow it with a countersink using the 3/8. And when you drill these holes, you want to try to avoid drilling wherever these inserts are for the rain screen. We want to try to stay in this area so we don't hit any metal. And be sure when you drill the countersink hole that I'm getting ready to do, we want to leave at least a 1/2 inch of the stone left onto the material. So we're only going to countersink here about 3/8 of an inch. Now, as you can see, not only do we got a hole, but we got a countersink so that we can hide our screw head to give it a nice finished look when it's all said and done. In order to install this piece, we're going to lay it right into the starter strip and right up to that corner in this case, and we're going to slide it back tight against that corner and just give it a little tap with our rubber mallet. We're back nice there. I'm simply going to use 2-inch screws this time, just to give me a little extra length to make sure I catch into the structure really well. Now I'm just going to tighten these screws up and just snug them. I don't want to tighten them up really hard because we will crack this stone if we do that. So we're just going to snug these up enough to hold this stone into place. As you can see, we are now secured to the structure, and we have to do this underneath of the countertop as well when we get to that point later. Because I want a single gang electrical box here, I must install this trim piece for a single gang electrical box. And this is very nice because it's a square, so it can be installed horizontal or it can be installed vertically. So whichever way you want to install this, you can for whatever orientation you want your outlet. A great tip here that'll save you a lot of cutting and give you a good looking job is to not run your wire through the wall yet until you get to this stage. Have your electrician run the wire behind this wall and don't stub it out until you have this block where you want it, or have it to where you know it's going to be. So that way, when the wire stubs out through here, it's exactly where we can install this to where we don't have to cut a bunch of sections of the stone. So for instance, if this had to be installed here, we would have to cut around this block. And because we don't want to make more cuts than we have to, I'm going to have the wire stub through the wall here now. So that way, I don't have to cut around this mounting block. Now that the wire is stubbed through the wall in the exact center, we can now install our mounting block. And I have this installed to where it's going to be exact center of this little wall. So I'm going to place this right where I want it. And I'm simply going to install the screws in the flanges to hold it into place. Also, make sure you check this with the level before you install it, so that way we have it where we want it. In this case, because I'm so close to this countertop, I'm just going to make sure I have the same reveal. I got about 2 3/4. All we need to do is verify that the power is off, and then I'm just going to slide this 2-inch electrical box that's for exterior, and it's going to go right over that wire just like so. And then I'm just going to place some screws here to hold it, and as you can see, that's going to give it a nice finished look for our exterior outlet. Here is the opening for my outdoor refrigerator. It's important that we keep it 24 inches wide and that the stone does not start running into this opening, because it has to be precise for the refrigerator to sit in there properly. And because of that, I'm going to screw a piece of plywood here to act as a stop for my stone to run up to, so I don't start running off. I'm at a point to where I got to address an inside corner. Now with the inside corners, if you're doing this on a house, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be able to see it from 2 different angles easily. But in this case, because it's an outdoor kitchen, I really can't look back in here and see the joint. I'm going to be coming in towards this grill almost always, right? So because of that, I went ahead and installed all the stone on this wall. Then I'm going to cut this wall to join up to it in the shape of the stone. And that's because I will never be able to see from this angle easily while in everyday use. So keep that in mind. So if you're doing this on a house, what I would recommend is you would place a stone tight up against the wall on one side and then come in on the other side and lace them up the corner. That's probably your easiest method. You could also 45 here as well and make 45 cuts, but it's a little more challenging. So because of this situation, it's like a tiled shower. I did the back wall first. I'm just going to cut around these pieces in order to continue my runs. Now, I would also like to stress that I'm going to start my stone running this way now, just because to finish this up, it's going to be much easier to cut pieces to join here in the center somewhere instead of trying to join these together and then stop my row at the same time. So I'm going to cut these pieces in now. Whenever you got to make sharp cuts on the wet saw, the wet saw typically cannot get the last little bit out of the corners. So a good fix for that is to have an oscillating tool with a diamond head on it. Then you can simply just finish that cut very easily without creating a ton of dust like so. So as you can see, that works great. And when the stone's a little wet from using the wet saw, it helps keep the dust down. So that's a good tip for cutting around items. CertainTeed currently offers 4 different colors for the stone facade: Harbor Sunset, which that's what's installed in this video, Pocono Autumn, Adirondack Snowfall, and Coastal Storm. I'm here at the next corner. In order to finish up this wall, I need to install these corners now. Something really important to note here, if we set this corner up where it belongs, it's important, I think, to take a level and level up from your bottom row to your starting corner. So that way you continue that same level run, which it's similar to how we were doing it, yes, but this is the first one where we had long rows meeting into a corner. So something important to note, and after you get that level where you need it, just secure it the same as you did the other corners, and then build this corner out and run up at the same time. Something really cool that I noticed about the integrated rain screen, it is embedded inside of the stone. As you can see, it acts as almost a rebar. I had a couple pieces I broke open to try to break apart, and I noticed this metal inside here holds it together really well. So it's like a reinforcement mesh at the same time, which I thought that was pretty cool to point out. While I was installing the stone facade, I noticed there are 3 common lengths. The middle length is 14 inches, the smaller length is around 10 inches, and the large length is around 24 inches. So the variety helps a lot when it comes to giving a very detailed architectural look. I'm at a point where I'd like to show you 2 different things. The first thing is right here, the stone sticks out a little further than the vinyl. So I'm going to put my factory ends here. So that way, when you're looking this way, you just see factory ends, and my cuts are actually going to be on the inside here. So that's just a good little tip. And also, I got a cutout for this 3/4 inch black iron pipe that's for the gas lines going to my grills and griddle. And this is going to go right up like so, and we're just going to mark the pipe just as you would mark a pipe anywhere else. So I'm going to set it up into place and then mark right in the center here. And then I'm going to slide it over like so and get it about the right height and do the same thing from this end. And then that's going to mark the center of our pipe once we extend these lines. So I'm going to show you how to cut out for a pipe. I'm going to use this diamond hole saw, and this is a kit that I bought when I was doing my tiled showers. And this simply is going to sit right in the center of where we need to drill the hole. Then the hole saw is going to be guided by this piece in order to drill this out. And if you want to purchase this, I'll put a link in the description below so you can check it out for yourself. So I'm just going to hold this right in the center of where it needs cut out at, and then place this on my drill. And then I'm going to place water down here as I drill, so that way we catch the dust. All right, so I'm going to hold tight to this piece, and then my helper is going to have the water hose slowly pouring into the hole as I cut, just enough to keep the dust down. Okay, as you can see, we got a nice clean hole to fish the pipe through. I'm now going to fish the stone right over that pipe and place it to where it belongs. All right, now make it level like all the other ones, and it's actually sitting really good there. So now we just place our screws like we typically would. And as you can see, our factory edge is nice and clean looking here. And we got a nice clean cut, and we can caulk around this here in a little bit. Something I thought was important to mention, whenever you're running long rows, it's important to carry your 4-foot level with you just to check it to make sure everything is staying straight and level. So I'm going to set this piece up here like so, and we're going to slide it tight just as if we were going to install a small piece, get everything lined up well. That looks good. And now I'm going to check with my 4-foot level from the previous stone to this one. And as you can see, we're sitting good where we're at, but you can shim this up. Let's say you had to put a shim here to close the gap, or if you have to shim this up a little bit to make it perfectly level, whatever you have to do, just understand you can work with this some. It's not going to sit directly onto the previous row and be perfect every time. How I'm finishing up against the countertop is how you would finish up along a wall. You simply just rimp down your pieces to fit and then place screws just like we did earlier in this video to secure them into place. In order to clean off the stone facade, we used a water hose with a soft bristle broom in order to clean off the stone. Do not use a pressure washer because you can damage the stone doing so. The final step to installing the stone facade is caulking the holes in which we drilled to countersink the screws. With that being said, CertainTeed recommends using a sanded caulk because sand is going to give you the best texture to make it look more realistic whenever you patch those holes. Now I do have 2 different caulks here. These are more for grout and tile. It's a low sheen caulk, and I have a dark and light brown. And I also have this stucco mortar repair caulk that's more of a gray. In order to experiment which caulk is going to work the best, I'm here on the back side of the outdoor kitchen where there won't be many people in case one doesn't look the best. So right here are 3 different holes that I'm going to experiment on and see which one looks the best. I'm going to try all 3 different tubes. First up, we're going to try this one. Next, we're going to try this one. So far, that one looks the best. That one looks so good, I don't even know if it's worth trying this one, but we'll go ahead and try this one. The clear winner was this lighter brown color. It's right here, you can barely see where I caulked it, so that's great. This one's too dark, this one's too light. I do like the texture of this one the best, but this one blends in the best. So I'm going to use this lighter brown for most of the caulking. Now in some areas this dark brown might work better, so we'll just have all 3 to go across everything while we're caulking. Because I did not want to use the light gray color caulk as what's going to be exposed, I filled in most of the hole with the sanded gray caulk and then finished up using the color matching caulk so it blended in well for a final product. Now that the stone is clean, the screw holes are patched, and everything is complete, the stone facade turned out really nice. I am very happy with the outcome of this installation, and the great thing about the stone facade is it's backed by a 20-year limited warranty, and it's also something that requires hardly any maintenance. In fact, the only thing you might have to do with it in the future is just clean it with soapy water and a soft bristle brush, and you'll be good to go. Wow, this stone facade looks really awesome. I am very impressed with how it turned out. Just how everything went together without having to use mortar, and the ease of installation, how fast this was, simply incredible. And if you want to know how I installed this vinyl siding by CertainTeed, check out this video. It'll help you out.